And
Welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast, where small shifts create powerful changes. Hey there, I'm Mika Hill, the Pivot Master. I built and sold a successful business by learning to turn life's friction into fuel. Now I'm helping others pivot with purpose, build unshakable resilience, and transform their challenges into momentum. Let's get started with this week's podcast. Welcome back. This is part two of the Resilience Arc series. In part one, we slowed down, we paused, we unraveled, we stepped into what I call the apostrophe, that sacred, disorienting space between what was and what's trying to begin. The space that most people skip, the stillness they're too busy or too scared to sit in. But if you listen to the episode, hopefully you're not skipping it anymore. You stayed, you breathed, you let it stir. And if you've been sitting in that in between for a while, feeling things shift, but unsure what to do next, this episode is for you because today we flip the switch. And when I say that, I mean it literally, because this is your first invitation to a whole new way of moving, one that doesn't push harder, but shifts smarter. Because now we pivot, not because the chaos is over, not because you've mapped it all out, but because you've gathered just enough clarity to move. This is the moment where we stop performing and we just start becoming. So, what do I mean when I say flip the switch? Well, this is where the grit switch comes in, and this is such an exciting concept. I can't wait to share it with you. Having this terminology has honestly changed how I pump myself up for navigating change. It gives me a language for something I used to have to white knuckle my way through. Now I just flip the switch, and it reminds me that momentum doesn't always require motion. Sometimes it just takes a shift in how I think about things, how I frame them, because perception is everything. Mindset makes the difference between spiraling and shifting. And the grit switch gave me a way to reroute in real time without needing a plan, a title, a permission slip. So the grit switch is that moment that your inner compass recalibrates. It's not about adding more pressure or nonstop effort to your plate. It's about shifting from survival mode to strategic movement. It's the decision to stop proving and start aligning. It's about flipping from burnout energy into something more precise, more powerful, something that's more you. And it's the mechanism that helps you move smarter, not harder, and it changes everything. So here's the thing. I don't think any of us need a master plan. I think we just need a moment of truth. A full body yes or a heck no that sets us free. And those are pivots. They're not strategy, they're signals, not a reinvention, a return to alignment, a return to clarity, and a return to who we really are. The real, authentic, I've got this version of you, the one who isn't performing or pretending, but is actually present. The one who doesn't need fixing, that just needs remembering. And this episode is about that exact moment, the moment that everything starts to shift. And if you've ever had a feeling of, I'm not sure what's next, but I know it's not this, you felt it. You felt it already. You just didn't have words for it until now. So we're going to name it, we're going to flip it, and let's get started. So I want to talk about the truth about pivots because pivots don't wait for checklists. They don't arrive when your inbox hits zero or you finally clean your garage or organize what you say you've been going to organize. It arrives when something inside you refuses to sit still any longer. Good, bad, or indifferent, something in you stirs. You start seeing things you used to overlook. You start feeling tension in places you used to push through. And it's not always loud, but it is definitely real. And here's the thing. The pivot doesn't always whisper. Sometimes it shouts. You don't earn it, you don't control it, you recognize it, and you answer it. Or it keeps showing up until you have no chance but to answer it. Sometimes it's a soft knowing, the knowing that you're not that version of you anymore, and that's okay. And sometimes it's a darn thunderclap with a what the heck am I doing here? Both are sacred, both are real, and both demand your attention. I want to tell you a little story of the night that I knew I was having a pivot moment. After we had sold the garbage business, I didn't leap into something new. I actually honestly unraveled. I remember almost losing it one day in the Dollar General when one of our trucks pulled into the lot. And the driver came in and he smiled and he said, "Hi, Miss Hill." And for a split second, I didn't know who Miss Hill was. It hit me that I had spent so many years performing a version of myself for the business that I couldn't even recognize my own name in that context anymore. And I remember going back to the office because we kept the office after the sale. And I stared at the old proposals and marketing plans and I thought, what if I need this version of me again? And sitting there looking at the life I had created, the stillness was brutal. And the constant barrage of thoughts was never ending. I couldn't perform my way out of this phase. I couldn't busy my way past it. But something started to shift, not in noise, but in the quiet. And after a while, there came a spark, not a lightning bolt, this little flicker. And it dawned on me, if I'm not bound by that identity anymore, what else might be possible? And for me, that was a pivot, not a plan, not a movement, but it was permission to want more, to move towards something, not to escape the not knowing, but to answer a call. And I remember one night shortly after, I was standing in my driveway, staring up at the sky. Living in the country is amazing that way. You see every star. The air was fresh and crisp, and I stood there breathing in the silence. Just standing there, breathing in the silence. It didn't give me answers, but I had this peace I hadn't had for months. And that was another pivot. You see, pivots don't always look like leaps or big changes. Sometimes they're just simple breaths with this sense of knowing. And that being said, I've had loud pivots too, the kind that slam you mid-meeting, that say, you are done here. The kind that rise up in your chest when you say yes to something again and feel your whole body scream, no. The kind where you wake up and think, this is not it anymore. And let me tell you, whether it's a whisper or a war cry, that's how pivots show themselves. And your only job is to honor it. So let me say this. Flipping the grit switch is like your inner GPS finally saying you're off route. You need to go this way instead. And you finally actually listen. And if you're wondering how the pivot feels, let me share that. Before the pivot, familiar things start feeling a little off. Maybe you feel like you're outgrowing spaces or conversations, roles. And during the pivot, like I said, that air changes. There's a sense of something more stirring, something different. You don't have the full plan, but you want to move it anyway. And the energy is electric. You are excited and maybe even a little scared about the change, but in a good way. You're not performing. You actually don't care what others think because you're becoming. You're becoming a new version of yourself. And after the pivot, you look back and you realize you didn't need a master plan. You just needed to trust the call, and you're glad you did. And sometimes you wonder, why the heck did it take me so long? And I love those moments. Now, before we go any further, I want to introduce something that's going to change the way you move forward. And I've already alluded to it, but I want to go into detail because this is going to turn the way you look at change and resilience on its head. It's something I created out of my own experience when I realized that the old formula of pushing harder, powering through, and performing for approval was burning me out. And it is called the grit switch. And once you learn how to flip it, everything shifts. Here's what most people get wrong about grit, though. I didn't realize how much people misunderstood it. They think grit is about pushing or hustling or forcing, but that's not real grit. That's just depletion with better branding. The grit switch, it is different. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. But you have to have had that pause that I talked about on the last episode to know what that is. It's the moment you shift from proving to pivoting, from force to fire, from exhaustion to aligned energy. And it's not the grind, it is the gear shift. Flipping the switch doesn't require a plan, it just requires a decision to trust the version of you that is rising beneath the surface. And that's the moment when you flip the switch that survival becomes strategy. It's the moment you stop defaulting to pure adrenaline and you start acting with intention. Intention. It's when you realize that just making it through the day isn't enough anymore. You want to move forward with clarity, not just momentum. It's not about muscling through. It's about recognizing when it's time to shift from reacting to responding and from coping to choosing. When you flip the grit switch, you are not surviving. You are steering your way to a new version. So I want to answer the question that you're probably secretly asking yourself. Well, how do I actually do this? How do I know what's real and what's just noise and what I'm meant to walk away from versus walk toward? And let's talk about that. First, the pause. But the real pivot isn't about adding more. And I think that's a general misconception most people have. When they're trying to fix things, they naturally thinking adding more is the answer, more plans, more pressure, more doing. But the pivot, it's often about doing less with more clarity. It's about subtracting the noise. Think about it. When a machine stops working, we don't always add more parts. Sometimes we remove what's jamming the system. When a closet is overflowing, the answer isn't to buy more hangers. It's to take out what no longer fits. And when your thoughts are spinning, the solution isn't always another strategy. It's space, stillness, breathing room. And the same applies here. The pivot often begins with subtraction, not addition. It's when you stop circling what used to fit and you start walking towards what actually does. It's the moment where you stop waiting to become ready and start moving like you are ready. Because clarity doesn't always come before the pivot. Sometimes it is the pivot. Does that make sense? Because that right there, the simplicity of it, that's what most people miss. So before we go any further, I just want to share the flip side of what we've been talking about, because there's something else that's just as important as the pivot itself. And here's the thing. The pivot is not rebranding everything overnight. It's not selling your house and moving to Costa Rica, though that's tempting, I know, or joining 6 masterminds and hoping that one will give you your identity back. The pivot is saying no to something that drains you, even if you used to love it. It's letting people down without crumbling or worrying about it. It's admitting just because you can do it all doesn't mean you should. And some of you, and don't take this wrong, are calling it a pivot, but it's really just a prettier version of the same pattern, a renamed role, a new logo on the same chaos. You didn't pivot, you performed. You avoided, you appeased, you said yes when your body was really saying no. You stayed in the pattern because it felt safer than change. And that's okay. But with awareness, you can really make the first flip, because the real pivot, the real flip feels like freedom. Now, you don't need to earn this next chapter of you. And I want to bring it home with one more truth, the kind that might sting a little, but I promise you it's going to set you free. Because while some of you are pivoting with power, others are unknowingly stuck in something else entirely. But let me tell you this. Each and every one of you are already living the pivot. If you're nodding along right now, feeling something shift, even if it's subtle, this is your pivot. Not the whole staircase, just the first step, the one that says, I'm not going back to what no longer fits. This is your pivot, and it's already moving you forward. So next time, next episode, number 3 in the series of 3 on the resilience arc, we rise, not in fantasy where change is just an idea, but in embodiment where you actually start living the shift. We're going to take everything you paused for, everything you pivoted towards, and we're going to put it into motion. No more waiting, no more wondering. This is becoming, this is momentum, this is the moment, it is your moment. And if this episode has stirred something in you, which I hope it has, that wasn't a coincidence. It was a signal. This isn't just a podcast. It's a call forward. The Pivot Point Workbook, it's your map. The Apostrophe Journal, it's the space to breathe. The Aligned Purpose Uncovered Workbook, it's the anchor. The Grit Switch Starter Stack is the full system. And they're all waiting for you at truebasishealth.com. You're not stuck, you're shifting, and you're not alone. If you felt the shift, don't sit with it, move with it. These aren't downloads, they're decision makers, they're tools with traction. And if you're ready to flip your own grit switch, this is where your rise begins. So until next time, this is Mika Hill signing out, reminding you to keep moving and keep flipping that grit switch. Talk to you next time. Thank you for being part of today's Ripple Effect. Remember, every pivot point in your life, even the challenging ones, carries the potential for transformation. The resilience you're building today is creating ripples that will impact your tomorrow in ways you can't yet imagine. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story. Connect with me at True Basis Health or leave a review sharing your biggest takeaway. Until next time, this is Mika Hill reminding you that you're just one purposeful pivot away from your next breakthrough. Keep creating those ripples.